1, 2, 3. Mic check 1. Mic check 2. Now I'm gonna start singing.
That sounds good.
Sounds good?
Yep.
Very well, thank you.
Good evening. How's everyone? I like as soon as I say good evening, somebody already started to clap. Y'all give yourselves a round of applause for coming out this evening. This is our MLK celebration, and I like to even now call it MLK. Thanks to VCU, we now have an MLK week. It's not just a day. This is how it started with Black History Month. Started with a week, who knows? Before it's over, we're gonna have an MLK month, who knows? But we're gonna have, first of all, I just wanna welcome you all here. We have been planning a lot of different things throughout the week. Started with a befriend walk on Monday. Yesterday, we had a great conversation with some students in the Commons at VCU here. And today, we have this particular event, which I will honestly say is one of my favorite events. We'll get started with a short video, followed by the Black Awakening Choir.
We're going to leave you with a tune written by Gene Taylor, a bassist. It's a tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King. It's some peace of mind.
There is something that I must say to my people
who stand on the warm threshold,
which leads into the palace of justice.
Once upon this planet Earth lived a man of noble birth, preaching love and freedom.
In the process of gaining our rightful place,
we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred.
Peace would come on us.
We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence.
Turn the other cheek, he'd plead.
Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights, meeting physical force with soul force. We cannot walk alone. As we walk, we must pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back.
Yes, with his Bible.
Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, and even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have the dream.
This great man is dead.
It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down at the table of brotherhood.
I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice.
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
I have a dream today.
Well, will your nation stand or fall? Is it too late for us all? And did Martin Luther King just die in vain? You know that he was for equality for all people. You and me, full of love.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome.
Can y'all give them one more round of applause, please? Wow, that video was amazing. I was telling Monique better than what I initially thought it would be. It's great. So now we're gonna have a series of speakers that's gonna come up and share some insightful words from their heart. First, we'll have three that I'll introduce at this particular moment. First, we will have Jessica Bell Brown, the ICA Executive Director. Followed by Jessica, we will have Dr. Mahbouba Muzavo, which is the VCU Associate Vice President for Community Partnerships, who will give the Welcome to MLK keynote celebration. And then followed by Dr. Muzavo, we will have Dr. Fotis Sotiropoulos, VCU Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs.
Thank you, Micah. Good evening and welcome. What a soul-stirring and magnificent performance by the Black Awakening Choir. So first, extending deep gratitude to President Rao, Provost Sotiropoulos, and our esteemed colleagues across VCU and the Richmond community. I am Jessica Bell Brown, Executive Director of the Institute for Contemporary Art. And as part of the illustrious VCU Arts community, it is such an immense privilege to welcome you to the 2025 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Week, keynote lecture, and fireside chat. At the ICA, our mission is to listen, to create, and to make art public. And well before we opened our doors to the public in 2018, the idea that undergirded the ICA was that it would be forged in the spirit of VCU as an innovative public research university and community that serves the common good and seeks to be a powerful force for social change. So through championing artists here, and thus dialogue through the artistic process and creative process, we are reminded of the words of Dr. King, who compelled us to find, quote, courage in the face of the uncertainties of the future. After all, artists lead in their work and inquiry with the relentless exploration of what Dr. King might describe as, quote, the unarmed truth, holding a mirror up to our society and pushing us towards empathy, understanding, and action. So today we honor Dr. King's legacy, and you are going to experience what I know will be a powerful suite of remarks from our esteemed guests of honor. We are so thrilled to have Reverend John Kinney here, and after his remarks, we will hear an insightful and riveting conversation that will be moderated by Dr. Tomika Ferguson. But first, allow me to introduce you to Dr. Mahbouba Muzavo, VCU Associate Vice President for Community Partnerships. Thank you so much for being here tonight, and I look forward to welcoming you to our reception thereafter.
Thank you so much, Jessica. We are so fortunate at VCU to have your leadership at the ICA. Good evening, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome, welcome. On behalf of the Division of Community Engagement in the Provost Office, I want to thank you for joining us. I know it is cold out there, and for you to have come to make the effort to be here says a few things, that this evening matters. The celebration, the legacy of Dr. King matters, and that's why you came out and you're coming to spend this evening to us. That his work, his message, after all these years, resonates as profoundly as ever today still. So again, welcome. Thank you for being here. We truly appreciate your presence. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the hard work, dedication, and vision that goes into making this MLK week, this MLK keynote, this MLK event possible. As we know, it takes a tremendous amount of effort to put on something like this. And I want to acknowledge Verinder Cobbs and Stephen Davenport, the co-chairs. They're both in the Division of Community Engagement. So I want to acknowledge their vision, their leadership, their commitment to the week's events. It didn't start off as a week, but they made it a week because we do need a week, and maybe we need even longer. Maybe we need every day for the legacy, for the profoundness of the legacy of Dr. King. But we also know that we do need leaders, but leaders by themselves, they need a team. And so I want to acknowledge this phenomenal team. And I know later on you will be acknowledged, but I wanted to say from the division, thank you, thank you, thank you. Verinder and Stephen would say all the time, this was not just a committee in numbers. This was just not people filling seats and having names on a list. This was a committee that cared deeply about this event. This was a committee from across the university, both campuses, different units, different divisions, different disciplines. And then, of course, our community partners. We cannot do these events without the input, the design, and the vision of our community partners. So I want to say on behalf of the division, thank you so much for your work to make this happen and for really, truly to demonstrate what it is to have community academic partnership. It's not just a name, it's not just in name, it has to be authentic. And thank you, Stephen, and for Verinder for making that happen, and thank you, everybody. I think I'm short on time always, but I just want to say that the other thing that this committee and the work and the way they have worked together really illustrates the framework that in the Division of Community Engagement that we stand by, that we try to live by, that we try to frame things by, and that is 3 words: partnership, alignment, and impact. And I would say that these 3 principles, concepts, really is showcased by the way that this committee has worked together. And so it's through collaboration with our community members and allies in the spirit of Dr. King that we embody what it means when we talk about collective action. And then impact. Why do we at VCU regard community engagement as central? Why? I posit that it is because impact matters. Everything that we do through the vehicle of community engagement is towards making a difference, is towards addressing societal needs, is towards being relevant to the communities that we are from. That is what community engagement is, and that is what impact is. And so Dr. King's leadership and his vision reminds us what it means to partner with intention, to embrace our differences while working towards a shared goal, and to truly make a difference. His life's work and the impact of his work alongside his collaborators. I mean, we're celebrating Dr. King today, but let's be very clear. Dr. King needed an entire team. He needed our parents, our foreparents, grandparents, to have been a part of it. It was not done just by Dr. King, so I think that's important. So, in closing, it is now my pleasure to introduce our Provost, who goes by Fotis, but he is Dr. Fotis Sotiropoulos, and he is, as was stated earlier, also Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs. I want to tell you, I told you earlier, the Division of Community Engagement is in the Office of the Provost. So I just want to say sincerely from my perspective, from my heart, that Fotis has provided unwavering support for community engagement. He has been a supporter from the day that I met him. He has a clear vision, and his goal has been and is, how can we integrate community engagement in all we do? I'm sure Fotis will say this to you, but to him, community engagement holds significant importance. And during his time at VCU, he has consistently communicated that message to his leadership team, and he has reinforced that message. So Fotis, thank you for your leadership and being such a steadfast advocate for community engagement. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Fotis.
Thank you so much, Mahbouba, for this, Dr. Mosavel, for this very passionate speech and this very kind introduction. Now, note to self, never agree to speak to an event following Dr. Mosavel because he's a very tough act to follow, right? But so I'll do my best. But before I offer some remarks, I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to ICA Director Jessica Bell-Brown for hosting us here in this wonderful venue. Thank you so much, Jessica, and welcome to VCU, because you are still relatively new here. We are thrilled to have you here. But also, I want to express my gratitude to Dr. Mahbouba Mosavel and the entire amazing community engagement team. Okay, let's give them a round of applause. These folks, I mean, you heard the passion, you heard the energy, the commitment. This is really what makes VCU move forward, really. It is people like Dr. Mosavel and everybody who is involved in our community engagement team. So today we come here together to honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a leader whose vision of justice and equality inspires us all to this day, even more so. So I will share with you my favorite quote of Dr. King, who once said, "The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education." And I can tell you personally, for me, these words always resonate because it informs everything we're trying to do here, as what I'm trying to do in my office and what we're trying to do at VCU overall. These words resonate deeply with our entire institution at VCU. Because at VCU, education, it's not just about preparing future leaders, educators, entrepreneurs, but it is also about empowering communities and transforming lives. Dr. King believed education was a force for good, a means to discern truth, challenge inequity, and build a more just society. His vision speaks to the heart of our mission as an access university dedicated to fostering academic excellence that leads to opportunity, innovation, and community impact. At VCU, we take enormous pride in being more than a university, just a university, because we are a partner in building thriving communities, driven by a commitment to real-world transformative learning and translational research. Our work extends beyond the classroom to address critical challenges, whether it is from improving healthcare access to fostering economic development and promoting social justice. This is the essence of what it means to support both leaders and the communities they serve. So, as we gather here today, I would like to call upon all of us to reaffirm our commitment to Dr. King's vision by leveraging education and research to empower individuals and uplift communities. Let us continue to be a university where access meets opportunity, where academic excellence drives discovery that serves humanity, and where learning builds not just better futures for our students, but a stronger and more just society for all. So, in closing, and as we reflect on these ideals and the way VCU embodies them, it is my great honor to introduce to you the person who has championed the vision I outlined above for our university. Under his visionary leadership, VCU continues to stand as a beacon of access, innovation, excellence, and community impact, ensuring that we not only educate leaders, but also uplift the communities we serve. Please join me in welcoming the President of Virginia Commonwealth University, Dr. Michael Rao.
Good evening. It is very good to be here and very good to be together at such an important time for a lot of different reasons. Provost Sotiropoulos, thank you for that incredibly generous welcome and introduction for me and our co-chairs, Brenda, Stephen, Ashley, thank you all for everything that you have done to put this together. And Jessica, great meeting you. Bam Bam, thank you for always putting so much energy into everything that we do and joining us. Magboba, thank you for your leadership as well. I also want to take a moment to specially recognize and thank Vice President Faye Belgrave. Dr. Belgrave has had incredible university-wide leadership that has really in many ways brought us together. She is someone who has great wisdom and knows how to bring different people from very different perspectives and thoughts together. She's a longtime VCU colleague who, and devotee who has just had tremendous positive impact on thousands, literally, of lives, and the lives of students, the lives of faculty, the lives of, she's a mentor to many faculty members, and certainly to many staff as well. And I would also add a tremendous number of people in our communities. So Faye, thank you very much for everything that you've done. Like Provost Sotiropoulos, you're a great colleague, but you're also just a great person. And that's probably the most important thing as I get older and older and I think about what matters, that matters to me. So thank you. And thank you for just being my partner on so many fronts when I can't be everywhere, and sometimes you can divide with me and go and help me bring people together. So thank you. Welcome to our keynote speaker, Dr. Kinney, and colleague from Virginia Union University. And I also want to say thank you to all the panelists who will be speaking. And thank you all for coming together at a time that we really do need to stop and reflect. And, you know, Bam Bam, it is a week, but, you know, if I had my druthers, it would really be a month or many months. You think about the value of what Dr. King brings to our lives, even today. It is truly transformative, and it was so necessary. We all have this personal connection with Dr. King, or many of us do. Mine is a very short overlap, of course, in life with Dr. King, but my dad, who died when I was very young, and he was very young, he was in Boston, and he had a chance to meet Dr. King. And I'll never forget, I don't remember all of the things he said because I was really little, but I do remember that a couple of times when Dr. King was on TV, my dad just smiled, and just everything else in the room had to be shut off so that he could focus on what Dr. King was saying. He was a tremendous supporter of Dr. King, and I think some of that might have been because he had grown up in India during the time of Mahatma Gandhi, and there were lots of similarities between Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. King, and just, I think more than anything, determination. You know, what you watched in what Dr. King did was he just never gave up. Nothing was going to get in the way of what he knew was right. He not only had a great vision, but he also just, he really lived. He lived for what he knew was right for all human beings. And he made a difference that we all benefit from today. And that's an important thing to say because I do want Dr. King to know, and I want his family to know, I know his son, and I will tell you, I want them to know that he made a permanent difference in so many ways. We might sometimes feel like we're taking a step back here and there, and we do, but the steps forward that Dr. King brought, we must celebrate and must continue to visit over and over and over. People everywhere fundamentally think and feel different. They feel very differently, in my opinion, because of him and because of what he did in his time. They're, you know, we saw some of the quotes in the video, and they were great. Everything he said was great. Because what I think Dr. King did is he came from here. And when you come from here, you have an ability to really create a profound movement. And that's exactly what happened. And it shifted so much of how people felt, not just how they thought, but how they felt. People often say the right things, but then you don't know really how they feel. But he shifted how people felt. And so I'd remind us of one thing he said that we need to remember and that needs to keep us going, and that is, we have come a long, long way, but we have a long, long way to go. And that teaches us the patience that's necessary to understand that when we are all living together in a society that is complex with so many different people from so many different backgrounds, we will always have a long, long way to go, but we are moving. He also spread wisdom that's very important today, particularly when you look at how much more easily it is for people to influence each other by whatever means. And I won't get into all of those means because we all know what they are. He said, "Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred." We do have to remember that because unfortunately there is too much of that. And my favorite, "I have decided to stick with love, for I know that love is ultimately the only answer to mankind's problems." Was there ever a truer statement than that? And we know it works. We have seen it. He was speaking of love as an act of community. He had watched and seen so many of the ways, and unfortunately personally experienced, what hate does to people. It is something that destroys lives, destroys this experience that we've been given as human beings. And so love is a way of really responding to a complex world with so many different kinds of people with complex backgrounds, so that when we see a problem, we really need to focus on what matters, and that is the empathy within ourselves to really be willing to be connected to other people. And that's so much less stressful, and that's one of the things that I think of, that I know Dr. King would join me in thinking about. I don't think he'd be happy to see how stressful the lives are of so many people. So now's the time to really come together and embrace Dr. King's absolutely righteous vision, including especially when we live in a world that works pretty hard, for whatever reasons there are, to split us apart through screens or other means. I ask you to think about where Dr. King came from, and I ask you to think about what he'd want. This is my opinion and my interpretation, but I think he'd want us all to get back here to who we really are. Lots of things can come through your ears and go to your brain, but be careful of what you let go down into your spirit. Very important for you to think about that. Maybe some of the best advice you could get. And I don't know why I'm saying that. I'm saying that because it's coming from here. It isn't particularly coming from here. So I ask you to think about that. And I thank everybody in the community engagement team for putting all of this together, and also for this opportunity to be together with you today. Be our crusaders. Be the ones to go out and spread the word about the value of human life, and spread all of the wisdom that Dr. King gave to us. He made a big difference that really shifted the ways that people live today. But we have a long, long way to go, and we can do it. Dr. King, you can count on us. We do need to all live better lives, and we will endeavor to do just that. Thank you all very much.
We're just going to erase that. Hello, everyone. How are we doing? Good. First of all, hey! First of all, thank you, President Rao, for some profound words. I can hear from the audience that we were very touched by what was said. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Toby Ojo. I am currently a third-year dual degree candidate in health services and sociology with a minor in human resources and management. Oh. Thank y'all for the applause. I really appreciate that. And I have the esteemed pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. Dr. John Kinney has devoted himself to the pursuit of excellence in theological training and ministerial preparation and has distinguished himself as a systematic theologian, academician, and administrator in a career that spans over 40 years. This includes 27 years of service to Virginia Union University as the Dean of the Samuel Dewitt Proctor School of Theology, thank you, and Senior Vice President of the university. He received undergraduate and graduate degrees from Marshall University and Virginia Union University, respectively. Come on now. He was awarded the PhD from Columbia University Union Theological Seminary, and he has also shared in instruction at Chicago Theological Seminary, Randolph-Macon College, Union Theological Seminary, and the College of William and Mary. Dr. Kinney has lectured extensively across the breadth of this nation and in Africa. He has been a featured lecturer at numerous universities and colleges, including Yale University, Duke University, Michigan State University, Howard University, Southern Methodist University, VCU, and the University of Richmond. He has presented at numerous theological schools, including Elis School of Theology, Bangor Theological Seminary, Shaw Divinity School, Hood Theological Seminary, the Baptist Theological Seminary, McCormick Theological Seminary, Union Theological Seminary, and many others. He is recognized for his theological constructions addressing the design, harmony, and creation, and the subsequent fragmentation and separation with a particular attention to racism, sexism, and materialism. His thoughts are included in several publications and crystallized in the article, The Theological Fallenness, The Roots of Racism. Dr. Kinney's commitment to the needs of the community at large is apparent by his avid participation in several professional societies and organizations. Dr. Kinney has served as a consultant to the American Baptist Convention, the Progressive National Baptist Convention, the Baptist General Convention of Virginia, and the United States Air Force, Army, and Navy Chaplain Corps. He has been a member of the American Society of Church History, the American Academy of Religion, and the Society for the Study of Black Religion. He has served the larger community of theological educators through multiple leadership roles in the Association of Theological Schools in the United States and Canada. Dr. Kinney chaired the Committee of Race and Ethnicity. He served as a member of the Commission on Accrediting and actively continued as a commission chair, vice president, president, and personal committee chair. His service to academia is complemented by his service to parish. Dr. Kinney has served as the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church in Beaver Dam, Virginia for more than 40 years. He and his wife, Quintina, are the proud parents of 7 children, in addition to 20 grandchildren and several godchildren. Please welcome Dr. John Kinney.
Young lady, bless you. Amen. In the vernacular of settings that I'm routinely familiar with, protocol having been established, which simply means the appropriate people have been greeted, recognized, and honored in various ways. So I now need not duplicate that process. What I will need to do is to give thanks to not all of those who make this moment possible through construction, but all of you who make it possible through presence. For the intrinsic worth and dignity that is expressed in your being and your evident commitment to cause and principles that can lead to a transformation of a fractured world. There's a saying that distorts the character of theological anthropology that says you're just a drop in the ocean. But I remind people all the time, you are not a drop in the ocean. The ocean is in your drop, which means that invested in you is the very nature, presence, and power of the creative source. And to dishonor you and to violate you is not only an insult to you, but to insult the Creator, and provides ample evidence of my own self-hatred and the negation of my own beauty and dignity, because I do not have the capacity to continually recognize that dignity and beauty in you. So to each of you, greetings. I'm mindful, my students know, and Bam Bam and Bishop Moore, I've had the privilege of being in the classroom environment with. They know that I tell them all the time that the time of a class is an implied covenant. So when I tell you it starts and ends, I can neither start or extend the class without the assent of those who initially invested in the covenant. And I realize that we're already a little tardy. So I'm going to try to compress my remarks, and I want to be attentive to appropriate recognition of you who have invested in this moment. The theme that gathers us, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends, would suggest to us that there is a degree of social awareness that would engender us to recognize that there are people in our context who are inimical to our well-being, and you call them enemies, and possibly just a confused friend. And the greatest pain you can experience is when those who give every indication and evidence that they're walking with you in a pilgrimage leading toward a shared destiny and common destination, only to discover that they indicated something to which they will not invest their person, their vote, their time, or their energy. And that breaks your heart. But Dr. King reminds us you can never allow infinite disappointment to steal a denial, finite disappointment to steal your infinite hope. So I stand here with infinite hope, but I must acknowledge to you, even to this day, the tears of disappointment have etched a salty path down my cheeks and fallen on a heaving chest that houses a broken heart. A heart broken because I believed we were on the cuspus of something different, to only find that we glorified the continued disease within our midst. I want to say a word beyond the words that guide us. Martin Luther King said this: sooner or later, people of the world and all people of every culture will have to recognize and cultivate a way to live in peace and thereby transform the impending cosmic elegy into a creative psalm of vibrant community and a just and sustainable future. And as we all hear all the time, justice anywhere is a threat to everywhere. We are tied in a network of mutuality, woven into a single garment of destiny. Years ago, there was a commercial that displayed a Fabergé egg, and sketched on the egg was the map of the globe. And it sat there beautiful, and the commentator said, "Isn't this a beautiful, magnificent expression?" But then somebody came along, and why is it that something that can be so beautiful, that there are always those who feel they have to tear it apart? I was grieved when I saw a female cleric in Washington, D.C. have the courage to gently remind everyone to show mercy and compassion and to recognize the worth and value of people who may not think like you, look like you, or even sleep like you. But the response was to her sincere expression of truth was that she is an non-thinking, non-compelling, limited value Trump hater. Why is it that everything we say has to be turned into an anti-statement? So if I say, I pray for the Palestinians, as a man who honors the cosmic creator and the design and desire of that creator for all of creation and creatures, that I don't want any creature violated, abused, and destroyed, manipulated, controlled, denied, and exterminated like anybody. If I say that, now I have become anti-Semitic. Rather than somebody who feels deeply about all of creation. I'm gonna be honest with you. Sometimes I raise the question, what's going on? I throw up both my hands and want to holler. There are moments where I would almost say, stop the world and let me get off. But then I thank God for the ancestors and the voices like Martin Luther King that says, hold on, keep fighting, keep believing in the arc of human history with all of the struggles that's bent toward justice. Today, we are confronted with a stark conflict in the vision of this nation. And please don't charge this politically, but can I just say factual analysis? That you have the celebration of a man who lived sacrificially. He saw a vision for the fulfillment of a dream of this neophyte nation with this experiment of democracy, living into a reality where all of the citizens could live by making an investment in a common community, leading to a common good and to a shared destiny. This man sacrificed, he loved, he cared, he gave. But yet in his heyday, it's so interesting that we celebrate Martin Luther King now, but you should have been here when he was walking the streets. He was called a rabble-rouser, an unpatriotic man, a man even a couple years ago, a major piece about how he is not truly a man of God, or else he wouldn't have done what he did. He's a rabble-rouser, and we take this moment to honor a man who gave himself for the sake of us all while we're in the midst of the ascendancy of the pathologically narcissistic with low moral fiber and skilled criminality, and we call them the representative of God, and they sit where they sit because the people of faith were the biggest supporters. Here's the challenge. We are laboring with diseased social imagination. Diseased social imagination perverts the social contract to the degree that all of our relationships are constructed in a way that we become monads who relate together for utilitarian purposes, primarily in a mercenary nexus. Okay, what does that mean? It means that you're objectified and commodified and used as an instrument or commodity to promote and elevate me, but I do not honor the intrinsic worth and dignity in you. You only have utilitarian purpose, and the minute you don't serve my purpose, I will kick you to the curb. Tragically, many institutions, I hate to say it, even academic institutions are built on that model. You only have value when I can use you to get what I want. Can I be me? Spiritually, that's called fornication. I do it to you. Fornication is the objectification of another human being, and when extended philosophically, even to another aspect of creation, where I get benefit from you. Come on. I access you not for your value, not in care, not in commitment or mutuality, but I access you for my own benefit and pleasure. And I have no real investment or care in you or your well-being. I will use you tonight and somebody else tomorrow. The brothers and sisters in the street have a name for that, but it's inappropriate to pronounce it in this context. Diseased social imagination. And if I could, it means that I relate to you primarily to serve 6 agendas in my life. You are to be used for my privilege, my position, my power, my possession, my profit, and my pleasure. Did y'all? I relate to you, and the first question is, how are you going to help my profit? Can I be bad? So I will even recruit people I don't value if recruiting them will help my bottom line. Okay. Profit, and then what? Pleasure, privilege, position, power, and possessions. It's called by Paulo Freire that we have embraced a necrophilic obsession. In other words, the very thing that we're doing in somebody else is an obsession with death that will eventually destroy this world. Thank God for the Martin Luther Kings of the world. And don't talk to me about a meritocracy. Because if we were doing things based upon merit, you wouldn't be sitting where you're sitting. If we look at this, and I'm going to cut this short. If we could begin to construct another approach to reality that begins with DEI. Did you ever notice the first attack when you come in is let me destroy anything that talks about inclusion of somebody I hate. And then I give you a reason and I weaponize that reality and help you to believe that which would bless you is actually a threat to you, because the way that I hook you is that I begin to assess that you are under a threat, and I am the one who can remove the threat. So you don't see your future with other people, you see your future by destroying those that have been taught to you that is your threat. But I want to change. I don't like DEI either, diversity, equity, inclusion. Even in this state, the governor said DEI is dead. Okay, can I have 5 more minutes? Come on. You can't kill diversity. There are too many fundamental factors, both philosophically, spiritually, and scientifically, that all creation experiences diversification and differentiation. The second principle of it is that nothing that exists in a diversified fashion exists in isolation. That fundamental to the well-being and flourishing of all creation is the mutuality and the relationship between the diverse elements. And if you don't attend to the diverse elements, including Mother Earth, if you violate that, you will be bringing death to yourself. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to get a master's degree. Everything, whether you're in church, in the classroom, or where you are out drinking a cup of coffee, drinking your thing and snapping your fingers, 2 principles. All creation is diverse and nothing exists in isolation. If there would be another principle, nothing is static. In other words, within that relational principle, all things are dynamic. They're going through change. They're moving. Amen. The reality is that we see this. But if we take this even further, we can't destroy diversity. Can I make it real plain to you? None of us is the same. There, if you do, the science would tell you what? There are minuscule variations that make us different. But guess what? We don't have the same fingerprints. We don't have the same retinal rod configuration in eyes. We don't have the same DNA markers. No two whales have the exact same flukes. No two zebras or tigers have the exact same stripes. No two leopards have the exact same spots. Do you realize no two snowflakes that fell in this country have the exact same design? No two leaves have the exact same vein pattern. And under electronic spectrum analysis, no two flowers have the exact same color or the exact same scent. You don't even have the exact same scent. When this marvelous sister here doing what I wish I could do, amen. Amen. When I see her speaking in tongues, now look, look. Look, do you realize the gift that is in her that's not in me? Come on. But we're still woven together. If you understand the principle of diversity, guess what? You know how I really understand it? You ever go somewhere and buy perfume and it smells so good and the commercial said, amen, come on, brothers, that they would be falling at your feet. Woo. But the reality is, based upon the pheromones in your body, when you put it on, it doesn't smell like it smells till it makes contact with you. That means you got a different scent. So if I give a bloodhound your clothes, they ain't going after somebody else. There's only you that is uniquely made. Do you understand? And now how do we live together in this? So you can't destroy diversity. I don't care, president, governor, diversity is. The question is, how do you handle it? How do you live in it? If you've weaponized equity inclusion, can I give you my DEI? DEI is, hear me now, diversity, empowerment, and integrity. DEI is diversity, equipping, and imagination. Your method of DEI is death and elimination, destruction and exclusion. Come on, death, elimination, and insult, destruction and exclusion and injury, and denial and extermination and indecency. But I believe in D&I, diversity. And once I honor the diversity, my question is, how do I equip and empower every aspect of creation? The disease model says, take something from them. The life-giving model says, how do you take what you have and sow into them? Well, I didn't look at that anyway. Can I tell y'all two stories? May I? Two stories. Two stories. My students will recognize this. I grew up, I know I look very young, but I lived through the season of segregation in schools. I was educated in all black schools, at least up until middle school. Am I blocking you?
You're good. I'll move around you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I went to Lincoln School, 1000 Chapin Street in Wheeling, West Virginia. The second grade, my second grade teacher, Isla Williams, died, and they didn't have another black teacher, and so they combined the second and third grade, so I got the second and third grade curriculum together, and I went to Miss Gertrude Dixon. Miss Gertrude Dixon was not only my Sunday school teacher, she was my school teacher. She taught me in Sunday school. And the basic lessons that have governed my life came from being in the midst of black schools that shaped my character. With all the fault in the resources, they formed me to be a decent human being. Well, you all know we didn't have ability grouping. Y'all realize that all of the kids, no matter what your specialty or exceptionality was, you were all in the same room. And you learned together. I didn't have an iPad. We got high tech when they took the times tables off the wall and they had something that looked like a window shade and they pulled it down and it would have the times tables 1 through 12. Anybody in here, my generation, recognize when that was the case? Amen. And Miss Dixon would go around in rooms. She had one stick with a tip on it, and she would tap the wall and tell you. And we would, by rote memory, come on, go around and learn our times tables. Amen. But you just didn't learn by just saying 2 times 2. You learned with a rhythm. The class got soulful. When you read, there was music in the air. When you did your times table, 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6. And it would get good to you. And you want to get up out of your seat. Hey! And my teacher was the first rapper I experienced. Because on the offbeat, she would give some affirmation. 2 times 5 is 10. Go, children. 2 times 6 is 12. You got it. And my psyche wasn't damaged or anything because in the 2nd grade, I was Mr. Kinney. And I remember the day she called me up because there was another scroll behind the scroll that had the numbers on it that was blank. And you had to take your mathematic exam before the whole class. And so she marched me around, boom, boom, till I got to 12. 12 times 12, 144. She said, well done, Mr. Kinney. And I went back to my seat. Come on, y'all. With all the pride I could go back. I sat down and she called on a student after me, and he messed up on 4 times 4. 4 times 4, 15. And I said, ah! Miss Dixon hit that wall with that stick. Bam! Class got quiet. And she walked back to me. And I froze. And she said, Mr. Kinney, hold out your hand. And I was ready for her to hit my hand with the other stick that she pounded with. And she put Jimmy's hand in my hand. And she said, Mr. Kinney, I told you you did well, but you just let us know that you don't have what it takes to do well. And she said, Mr. Kinney, till Mr. Smith passes, you don't pass. And in the 2nd grade, I lost my recess time, had abbreviated lunch so I could sit and tutor somebody I had laughed at. Next time he got up there, I wasn't laughing. I was praying, help him, Lord. Help him, Lord. But then, as a child, I learned a fundamental lesson, and I'm going to stop on this. There's more, but I'll stop. Here's the lesson. You can't call yourself a success when you're laughing at somebody who's failing. Walk together, children, and don't you get rid of it.
Wow. And as stated, yes, this is my professor at Virginia Union, sent me to DeWitt Proctor School of Theology. And you can imagine the first day of class, you get in class and he start executing and keep competing and saying all those big words. You're like, I am gonna fail this class. But no, he does exactly what he talked about in the 2nd grade. He's gonna hold your hand until you get to where he know God has for you to go. Last year, we had a great speaker in Vernon. This year, you raised the level with Dr. Kinney. So I guess I can go ahead and say now, next year we will have Jesus Christ. You can't go nowhere from this point. All right, so we're not gonna go into our fireside chat, and I'm gonna be very brief with their bio so we can go ahead and get right into it. Our fireside chat will be done with a moderator and 3 community leaders that will be answering questions as it pertains to the life legacy of Dr. King and how it can be portrayed and executed here in our own space in Richmond, Virginia. Fireside chat, our moderator will be Dr. Tomika L. Ferguson. She's Assistant Dean for Student Affairs and Inclusive Excellence and an Assistant Professor in the Department of Educational Leadership at Virginia Commonwealth University School of Education. With over a decade of experience in student affairs, community partnerships, and educational leadership, Dr. Ferguson is committed to fostering equitable learning environments and enhancing student success. Her scholarship focuses on the intersectional experiences of minoritized students, particularly Black women in athletics, and how to identify and community shape academic and athletic outcomes. Our moderator is Dr. Ferguson. One of our panelists for our fireside chat is a great sister of mine. I call her Auntie. She is Carol Adams. Ms. Carol Adams has worked in law enforcement over 2 decades. She was employed with the Richmond Sheriff's Department for 7 years prior to joining the Richmond, Virginia Police Department, where she has worked for 18 years. Ms. Adams graduated from the University of Richmond with a bachelor's degree in human resources management. Ms. Carroll's a graduate of the Virginia Division of Forensic Science, Richmond Police Department Leadership Challenge, and Richmond City University Leadership Development Series. She has received appointments to the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services Board and the Department of Juvenile Justice Advisory Board. Our next panel is, our first panel, should I say, is Ms. Carol Adams. Our next panelist that I will introduce is I-Kamilah Hiwott. Did I say that right, Ms. Kamilah? Say it for the people, please. I-Kamilah Hiwott. Thank you, thank you. I-Kamilah Hiwott is an inspiring Africana Studies professor with a passion for exploring the rich tapestry of African and disparate cultures, histories, and social movements, Her academic journey as a double major in African American Studies and History has been plenty with fellowships and internships, such as her time with the East Marshall Street Well Project and the Inclusive Excellence Fellowship. She has also completed an internship with VCU's L. Douglas Wilder School's RISE Institute in efforts to research and provide resources on the strength and accessibility of Black Richmonders. As a 2024 recipient of the VCU Black History and Making Award, she looks forward to rewarding career in research and community engagement post her undergraduate degree. And so, I'm gonna mess it up again, Hiwott, is that right? Hiwott, okay. Y'all give her one more round of applause, and my apologies. And last but not least, our last panelist is Mr. Sean Miller. With more than 25 years of experience in youth and family engagement, Sean Miller has devoted his career to empowering young people through education, sports, and community programs. His journey began as a summer tutor, and over the years, he has been a teacher, coach, counselor, and administrator. Today, it is such an honor for me to introduce this idea or this reality. He serves as the president and CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Metro Richmond, and might I add, our first African-American male president of such an organization, Mr. Sean Miller. Take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you're enjoying yourself so far. And Dr. Kinney, thank you so much for inspiring us. So we have a few questions that we're going to ask and really engage in a conversation inspired by our focus quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. So just to start, I'm going to start with you, Sean. When you think about the quote that we focused on for tonight's event, what resonates with you from a professional or personal perspective, and also thinking about the work that you do in the region, especially in Richmond?
First and foremost, I need to say thank you, Dr. Kinney, for bringing church to VCU today. And quite frankly, if I could just rewind and push play everything that he said, I would. First and foremost. So I'll take a different approach to this. What popped up in my mind as I thought about this question and thought about that quote, and I don't know where this originated from, but somewhere probably in the South, maybe in the 50s or 60s, somebody's grandmama or big mama or grandmother said, everybody ain't your friend. So all of us have probably heard that. We've probably said it to our kids, or we've had it said to us. The big thing that resonates with me is being able to have the power and the foresight to identify your circle, understanding who your tribe is, and really understanding what you're looking for. Who can you who can provide that to you, as far as that's concerned. Everybody doesn't serve every purpose, and identifying your circle, the strengths, and obviously the diversity within that circle is very, very important. Professionally, personally, it is really important to find your tribe, and it's really important to have that person that's going to be your cheerleader, your ally, but also that person that says, hey, you messed up. It's that pat on the back of that kick in the butt that makes a big difference. But that's a powerful quote, and the biggest thing about it is that we all have voices, and we need to be able to utilize them for something that's meaningful and commit to it.
I appreciate the response because there's this innate part of that quote that stated that there is a community, right? Like that we already have established friends. And so one of my favorite places to make friends was in undergrad. So Kamilah, what are your thoughts about the quote? How does it resonate with you, particularly as a student and aspiring Africana professor? What are those things that resonate with you personally about this? And I would love if you can speak to, and we've had a conversation, if you can really speak to the essence of what's happening now with the students and bring it younger for us.
Absolutely. So this quote just kind of makes me think of the commitment to humanity that we all share. It's a unilateral, commitment that we all have to make the human race, go further. And on campus, I've seen so many different students and organizations come together in ways that are so meaningful to allow for their advocacy to shine through in issues that affects all of us, even if you're not members of that community. At VCU, I've been a part of so many different visuals for so many different communities in need of, light and love. And in those spaces, I found myself, able to find community within people who I typically, wouldn't share, those spaces with, but we were able to get in these ideas together of how to move forward, but also how to emphasize our community's strengths within finding the people who are similar to us and being authentic within that community. So I truly think in my experience, just being someone who was responsible is one of the first steps.
Talking about responsibility, I think that really aligns with your experience in over 2 decades in law enforcement. So how does that quote also resonate with you personally and professionally?
Well, it's a reminder of the importance of advocacy, regardless of what your profession is, right? And your support and active engagement in relationships. And I'm really, really big on relationships. And like Sean says, understanding your circle. There have been quite a few instances. I'll use my childhood, for example. I lost my mother to a tragic event, and I was always in the middle, and my sister was silent, and I really didn't understand that because I was really proactive about that. But then also when we look at my professional career, we look at the civil unrest that I was tasked to do an interview during Mr. Floyd's, the civil unrest during that time. And I had to, and I proudly publicly stated on CNN that I was against his actions and the actions of the officers that were there, because during that time, a lot of police officers, a lot of public safety officials were not speaking up or stepping up to say that these actions were deemed wrong according to our profession, according to our training. And so those times when you have to step out and you have to be that leader, and everybody may not acknowledge that or be bold enough to say or express what appears to be right or wrong, then this is what Dr. Martin Luther King was talking about. He sacrificed his life. He got out, he marched, he walked during the day, during the night. All times he went to the communities. He didn't just stay in his own communities. So sometimes we have to step out, and we cannot, hide in the corner. And I often say that, he did the work, and so now he's left us with it, and we must be bold enough to carry it on and stand in what you believe and be empathetic, and your friends may not stand with you and support you on every issue, but there are times when God has ordained us all to step up and to take the land and to do what he has deemed us to do.
That's so powerful how you talked about the standing up part, because The quote again is, in the end, we'll remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And in preparing for tonight, I started looking at the connection between memory and silence. And like there are research studies about that. I'm a professor, so I nerd out. And I read some science articles about it. And what stood out to me is there was this part of it that talked about how not talking doesn't always mean that you'll forget. There's this connection that silence doesn't mean that it's a false ignorance or a real ignorance. And they talked about it from the experience of trauma, that sometimes people might not speak about traumas, but it doesn't mean they'll forget about it. And so when people think that silence is something that is always the obvious choice, it makes me wonder if they really have demonstrated a commitment to their community, if they're really thinking about humanity, if they're really taking on the type of courage that it takes to speak up, because silence can be misinterpreted so much. And that's why it's really important that you know who you are as a leader. And so one thing about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is that he was an authentic leader. You know what you got. He was consistent from the 50s through the 60s. He was forever consistent in his writings, whether he was in prison, whether he was preaching, whether he was marching. And so I want to talk about authentic leadership and moral courage. And really, I'm going to start with you, Carol, because you really led us towards that. Can you share a moment in your lifetime where you feel as though you have demonstrated authentic leadership and moral courage in addressing the issue? And in your reflection, could you share maybe one lesson that you think is relevant to how we can engage with some of the challenges that our society is facing today?
Wow. So during the civil unrest, I served as a liaison for the city. And so I had to attend meetings with the occupiers and the residents of Monument and the Monument community, as well as the city representatives. And I would show up in my police uniform. And of course, everybody knows how the media, how it looked as if the occupiers were these awful people. And they were just individuals who were standing up for what they believed. The residents were standing up for what they believed in their homes. And we met for about 6 or 7 months. And when things would happen after hours, the residents at the monument that lived on Monument would call the police and say, well, Carol was working with us. So the police thought that was good because the residents at the monument would call, but when the occupiers would call, they thought I was a traitor. So it's like, well, why is she meeting with them and this, that, and the other? So it was easy for me because I'm a people person and I judge people according to the space that I share with them, not what other people tell me about them. And so during that time and being chosen, selected to go and to participate and to be a part of that, first of all, my city trusted me to treat everybody with dignity and to be that leader that they could depend on that would help us get to some resolve. And my lesson is that you stand up for what you believe. And most of the time when there's opposing sides and opposing teams, it's just like football. Everyone wants to win, right? Everybody has a playbook, but it depends on the resources. So the occupiers did not have the resources or the wherewithal to articulate in certain ways as to what they believed or what they wanted. And when we all sat down at the table, that's what we shared. Everybody took turns listening, and it is about being a human being and seeing people, whether they oppose or they believe like you believe, as a human being, and everybody has a right to a voice.
And there's a certain level of your story when you're talking about the authenticity that you had to demonstrate. We had to know yourself in the midst of being misunderstood or even misconstrued with your presence. And one thing about moral courage that I think we forget about is that it requires elements of vulnerability and relationship and community. And honestly, it also takes risk. And when I think about the impact of your story that you shared, there are a lot of people, and some of the most vulnerable of those people were actually our students and our youth. And so, Sean, in your work leading such a massive organization that has a huge impact in our Richmond metro community, how do you feel as though authentic leadership and moral courage has occurred in your professional career? And what's a lesson that you can share with us about that?
So first and foremost, I think it's mandatory for you to really step into who you are and maintain that space. I think many times in leadership positions, or even just working inside of an organization, or being part of something much bigger than you, at some point your morals may be, or your ethics and your values, they may be at odds. And I think it's that moment where there's a decision that needs to be made. And the decision is, what's the value add here? What's the value loss? But ultimately, what am I willing to sacrifice? What am I willing to lose? But also why? Getting deep into that why, answering your why is super duper important, simply because if it doesn't happen, you're just existing without a purpose. So I think with authenticity, the purpose or the why is really rooted in that behavior as well. As far as a leadership example that comes to mind, and this is pretty traumatic, but we had a death that happened across the street from one of our facilities. And as a leader in the organization, it's funny, Carol called me that night, I still remember it. But anyway, as a leader in the organization, it would have been really easy for me to just send out an email saying, hey, hope y'all all right, and go from there. That would have been the easiest thing. The reality is that I heard the gunshots, I saw the body, I felt the fear and concern that my team felt because I was in the building. So from an authentic leader standpoint, I was there, I could live it, I could breathe it, I could feel it. And the vulnerable aspect that really presented itself was that I was in a leadership position, but I didn't have the answers. So being vulnerable enough to say, hey, we are really in this together. Being vulnerable enough to say, I'm not the expert. I don't have the answers here, but we've got to figure this piece out. So that was really important, but it was also one of those things that it was just a lived experience that, again, I could have avoided it. It probably would have been easier emotionally to just separate from it and stay away, not send out an email or whatever. But I heard it and I was there and I felt the pain that my staff felt. The most intriguing aspect that I saw was when the kids came back into the building that Monday. It literally happened across the parking lot. Families were scared, kids were scared, staff were scared. It would have been really easy for us to close the doors. But guess what? We served a bigger purpose, and we had people that needed us. Our kids needed us, families needed us, and we had to sacrifice and step into that gap as far as that's concerned.
I appreciate you for sharing that story because when you talk about empathy, sometimes it takes courage to be empathetic. And when we don't have an environment or a community or a team that doesn't have moral courage, it leads on a path to destruction that sometimes we aren't able to come back from. And that's why not everyone has the capacity to demonstrate moral courage in every space. It becomes a really huge challenge when you are a visible leader to do that. But when you were empathetic, you put yourself in the position of those families and those parents, and they'll probably remember that. And you probably were able to strengthen and deepen the relationships you had with people right across the street, right across the parking lot. But that lets me think about legacy, right? Legacy is so important because it's not just about your story when you're passed away. Your legacy is built while you're living your life. And so, Kamilah, I think legacy is important, and you are very proud and bold to say, this is what I'm going to be. This is what I want to do. Y'all, she is going to change the world. I'm going to just let you know. I'm trying to be her mentor. I'm asking her, you want me to mentor you so I can learn?
Yes.
But what's fantastic about what I've learned from you is that you are committed to a lifelong calling and something that you're using academia to build at something bigger than yourself. And so I'm interested in learning, if you had to use one word, that's all, you can't use a phrase, it can't be hyphenated. So, one word to call people to a space of action for this time and this moment, what would it be? And how does Dr. King's vision continue to inspire and empower us to address some of the challenges that we're facing right now?
Well, thank you. That's a great question. Just going to the legacy of the many civil rights leaders before, Martin Luther King Jr., I definitely think that for him, as well as his legacy, one word that really truly stands out is resilience. that strenuous power that, you know, he fought with to make sure that people could have their civil rights is something that was an everlasting battle that we're still fighting today. Having the resilience to, you know, withstand the hardness within the fight that you are, you know, joining or wanting to be a part of is something that makes an authentic leader someone easy to call upon, but also powerful to work with. I definitely feel like in his legacy, the way that he used all of his resources and his connections to his community through the struggle that they were fighting before their own parents, before their parents' parents, has been something that has inspired me within my own journey in activism on campus, as well as what I would like to do within academia. And I definitely feel like within current times, academia is constantly changing, but it doesn't mean you can't contribute to a new form of it or a new form of authenticity in your own, you know, life. So within that is finding yourself within others, but also sometimes creating someone who has never been seen before, an idea of something that you can actually say is your own that may be undone before, but can help open the door for others. So sometimes when you can't find the door, you have to create it yourself. And I definitely feel like within, you know, King's legacy, I found myself constantly finding his resilience something to be a strong motivator within my academic career, but also within how I, you know, engage within my Richmond community. Because I'm very proud to be from Richmond, and I've seen Richmond change throughout all the years of me being here, and I still want to continue to contribute a meaningful relationship to the community that I'm coming from. So that's really what guides me through.
Yes, and yes. When Dr. Kinney was talking, he said, all creation is diverse and nothing exists in isolation. And I had a word before I heard what he said, but I think the word withstand, yes, that's 2 words, but it's still 1 word in the dictionary. Because the lack of moral courage, the fear that we see people having, the fear that is being perpetuated that about things that we will never experience in our day-to-day life is causing people to not only be silent but to be stagnant, right? Like there's a difference between standing through and then standing and you're just still. And so for me, I think Dr. King never stood still. He just stood on. Like he stood on his principles, he stood on his word, he stood on so many things, and he withstood hatred and attacks and threats. And I don't know if we have had a life experience in this generation to where we've seen people have to go through the turmoil that we only learn from in history books and through the internet. And I wonder what it would be like when people understand that you have to withstand, that you have no choice but to finish what you're started to do. And so there's this thing about we have to bridge our past and our present and our future. We have to bring it all together at some point to make sure we have action that's sustainable. And Dr. King's vision was rooted in building and sustaining a beloved community. There's a lot of writings about beloved community. Carol, when you think about the term beloved community and really bridging the past, the present, and the future, what role do you think the local Richmond community and even the campus of VCU can play in the work to inform and energize what's happening now and even future efforts around community engagement and advocacy and institutional change? What is the role that the community plays in doing that work?
Well, first we have to bridge the gap between the people. It is clearly evident that the East has much less than the West, and we have to close that gap. So we're talking about equity and access. And it can't be rocket science because the East End is not that far from the West End. So that's first. And we have to bring people together so that they can have an understanding that when we thrive, we all thrive. And Dr. King's legacy is about that guiding light. It is about bringing people together, and we're all God's people. And as we can see with what's happening in the United States alone, we got frigid temperatures on the East Coast and we have fire on the West. And so right now, it's horrifying. But the people that lived in California in the hills, they are having experiences that some of our everyday local people have, the struggles of not having. What do we do with this and what do we do with that? And my grandmother always taught me to treat people like I wanted to be treated. And we cannot judge people based on the shoes that they wear or from the position where they stand, because they are not responsible for that. And I think when we take the time to remove that them versus us, or that's happening to them and not to us, then we can bridge those gaps. And when we think about the school, the community, we talk about VCU, we talk about programming, and like Sean works with youth, I work with youth because I've been taking care of myself since I was 17 years old. And I'm thankful to God that my grandmother, my mother gave me the wherewithal to make it and to make the right decisions or the best decisions. But how do we give people and children hope and provide spaces, learning spaces? When we talk about education, which was one of Dr. King's priorities, we have a lot of people that get services from entities, but how do we change the dynamics of them just receiving services to receiving education to be professionals? There are a lot of certifications that people could get to empower them and to change their living standards, right? So when we do research on people in different communities, we gather that data, but how does that data reverse to help the people that we're receiving it from, right? So it goes back to like what Dr. Kinney was saying, we use for our own purposes, but when we get the information and we're targeting certain communities and certain groups to gather information, what are we putting back in those communities, right? So that's the key. That is the foundation. We got to bridge the people, the services, but we've got to be willing to do it day in and day out, but all times of night. When I service people, my phone is 24/7 because people need services after 5. People need to know that they could go to school and they could become a phlebotomist in 6 to 8 weeks. People don't know that. People go to hospitals, they get services. They don't know they could be an x-ray technician and it doesn't take a college degree. So education and awareness, but taking the time for students to learn, internships. Put me in the space because, we are great people. If we get in the space, we can figure it out. So that's equity and access and opportunity.
What stands out to me about what you said was, it reminds me of you're known by the fruit you bear. And if our communities are fully engaged with one another and VCU doesn't end on the sidewalk or at Broad Street, we will be known for the fruit we bear, not for the publications and the research dollars. Those are very good headlines. They make a big difference. But what is the actual impact that's sustaining beyond that engagement? So if our students are doing externships and internships and research, what fruit are we bearing in those communities? And vice versa, when our community members are working with VCU, what partnerships are we doing? And there's this joke that happens in higher ed where we hear this term like theory and practice, right? We teach you theory and then you get to practice it. Well, sometimes it needs to become cyclical, right? It's got to be, what is it that I need to do? How can I practice it? Now that I practice it, let me go back and do it again. And that continuous cycle builds sustainability. And that's why I appreciate what you said, because I do think that we can't turn it off all the time. The needs of our communities are so important, and being a student probably feels like a 24/7 job. So what are some of your thoughts about the role that our campus community, in particular VCU, can play in the work to inform and energize efforts around community engagement and advocacy and change?
Absolutely. I feel like my life in Richmond before starting VCU in 2019, it just felt like a separate world. I felt like as a Richmonder, VCU kind of existed within this bubble. And with a lot of action and change, I feel like VCU is trying its hardest to integrate themselves into the community and not just be, sitting in the center of the city. And for me as a student, it gives me meaningful pleasure to actually be a person from this community, go to the university in it, but also contribute through action and research, and not just in ways that is only useful in academia, but are actual useful ways for my community to actually, be able to sleep better at night, to be able to find access of food, to be able to understand the history of this place. I truly feel like within my university, I found myself finding community within others who want to change from the inside out, but also allow for the conversation of change to not just be a campus-wide thing. We want to make sure that everyone is, I feel like, truly advocated for. And within my time here, I found so many different facets of information that allows for me to share to the public and give my knowledge to people who may not otherwise have access to it. So for me, I think it's just creating that access, because where some people are cut short, other people may have more of, but it's up to us to be able to lower those barriers to allow for everyone to have an equal opportunity, but mostly for people to connect. And that's truly what I'm doing here.
And I think the best example of connection in every community I've ever been in is a Boys and Girls Club. And so when you talk about access, there is no limit. What is it that you think the role that the community can play in really moving things forward to energize what's happening now and connect us to some advocacy and change?
I'll answer it this way. So let me give a big shout out to the institution that is VCU. So I'm a Southside kid. I grew up at Broad Rock and Walmsley. I came to VCU. My journey was not straight from Huguenot High School to VCU, but had it not been for Dr. John McGrath in the sociology department, I would not be sitting here today. That relationship went across race, age. There were a lot of different barriers in between us, but he challenged me in a way that made me realize, like, hey, your plan is probably the dumbest damn plan that I've ever heard. All right. He literally pulled out my sheet and said, you are too close to quit. And I've been challenged, I played college sports and all that stuff, but I was challenged by a professor to do better. To answer your other question, at the Boys and Girls Club, we're operating under the 3 E's. And I think this also connects with something that VCU does, because we've been a primary partner with them for a number of years, even when I was a student. But exposure is important. Exploration is important, and then that engagement. When you put that equation together, there's success at the end. Because in our community, our kids at some point in time, they may not know that the world exists beyond a 2 or 3 mile block radius. And there are opportunities that they don't know exist because they simply have not been exposed. There are stories, and I need to find out who this was, but it was a football player that once said that if I knew I could have been a lawyer or a doctor, I would have been. We've not done our best job or our best work in making sure that our community and our kids understand the opportunities there for them. The other part about it is there are bumps in the roads, there are potholes. I almost hit one on Gray Street in the left lane. Be careful. But the reality is that, you know, resiliency came up. Integrity is another word that comes up. And I'll just close with the integrity piece. What is integrity? Integrity is doing the right thing when nobody's watching. Because you'll do crazy stuff alone. You'll talk to yourself, you'll sing in the shower. We got a lot of Beyoncés in here and singers, I'm sure. But again, if you have integrity, have moral character, your values align, the importance of an institution like VCU is identify the values and make sure that they resonate and connect with the community. Just like Carol Adams said, that's important. Understanding what the need is and identifying the need, and then going ahead and trying to resolve it and address it.
I appreciate your comments. And as we bring our panel to a close, I'm going to bring us back to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. I recently had a conversation with a speaker by the name of Dr. Eddie Moore Jr. He does a lot of work in eradicating and dismantling white supremacy. And one of the things he said really has resonated with me. He said, the best friend that hate has is silence. And I think that in a time where we are, where it's politically charged, we're stressed out, our mental health is at risk, everything seems like it's adding on. I haven't encountered someone who's just joyful and gleeful and just gallivanting, you know, around. People don't feel light anymore. And that's because hate has seeped into our very well-being in our daily lives. So I challenge you to take on the burdens and the strengths and the confidence and the walk and the ability to withstand so much that Dr. King did for us. How is it that we can make sure that hate is lessened in our daily lives? How can we demonstrate that by taking that out with darkness, right? Taking that darkness out with love. And so I encourage you to remember, beloved community, remember the words that were spoken by our panelists regarding authentic leadership, showing up, community, integrity, using our experiences on our campus, in our community. And how you show up matters. No matter how someone might interpret you, your presence still has value. So we thank you for your attention and for your time and for the organizers of this event, and we appreciate everything that's happened so far. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I can say this. I think I speak for everyone by saying I am energized, I am motivated, and I needed it. Yeah, I really needed this. So thank you, thank you. I thank um, Community Engagement for putting on this wonderful event. My name is Faye Belgrave. I'm VCU's Chief Diversity Officer and also Vice President of Inclusive Excellence. I appreciate Community Engagement hosting another fabulous event that provides us with the opportunity to translate Dr. Martin Luther King's dream to VCU and our community. So community engagement and many units, including my unit of Inclusive Excellence, mirror in the panelists said this, of course, Dr. King's philosophy on building a community centered on love and respect for all members of humanity. At the same time, like Dr. King, we are realistic in our mission and recognize the challenges that our communities are facing today, and certainly Dr. Kinney pointed some of these out. I've had to look hard at some of the words that Dr. King has spoke, and one thing that resonated with me was overcoming fear. And I think similarly today, Tomika also talked about this. We're fearful and we're anxious about what has happened with the new administration and what is going to happen. But as Dr. King said, and I'm going to paraphrase this, in the moments of loneliness and in this struggle, it is right to achieve something that will hold up mankind. And when I see these things, the fear fades away because of a greater commitment to a moral idea. And that has helped me squash my fears somewhat. So Reverend Kinney, thank you so much for your impactful words. I'm gonna have to come back to Ebenezer. Dr. Tomika Ferguson, Carol Adams, Sean Meal, and I-Kamilah Hiwott, thank you for inspiring us to do more and be better. This evening's conversation was meaningful, and I hope we will continue this conversation beyond this wall of this building, because I am an educator. I have an assignment for you. Think about Dr. King's dream and what it means to be truly inclusive as opposed to performative in our actions. Your voice and determination to reach across differences is important and makes a difference in many ways. I'd like to also take a moment to thank President Rao for his advocacy and support of inclusive excellence work to teach and build bridges with our colleagues, our communities, and our neighbors. I am eternally grateful to the Division of Community Engagement and the many other organizations hosting and sponsoring this event in celebration of Dr. King's legacy. Let's continue to talk and take care of ourselves and one another. Ashe.
Good evening, everybody. Can y'all just say this with me? Wow. Tonight has been absolutely phenomenal. My name is Verinda Cobbs, and I am the Senior Manager for Civic Innovation and Partnerships in the amazing Division of Community Engagement. On behalf of the whole committee, can y'all please stand if you are on the committee? Can you all celebrate them? So excited about the amazing work that has happened. And there are others here as well. We started working on this event, Stephen and I, in August. And we realized that we very quickly wanted to scale up, elevate, as our leader would say. And in that process, we decided to do a week of events in collaboration with
divisions and units across the VCU and the VCU health system. And so we're thankful that you have been able to join us on tonight. I could say a whole lot, but I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your collaboration. Thank you for your commitment to live the dream that MLK talks so deeply about. We would not be here without your presence. And so we appreciate you. And I'm going to pass it to my brother, my work brother, Stephen, to share his comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Verinda. Normally I say I'm gonna be quick because of time, but the truth is I'm always quick. I think it's important to be concise if you can. Before I get through the more ceremonial pieces, I do want to be reminded that we live stream this event and we have people who are watching it. So we thank you for your participation online. This has been recorded. It'll be posted on our website as well. So we want to thank those who have joined us online. I also want to say that when we think about the legacy of Martin Luther King, it's really important that we're reminded, especially in these times, that we don't exist in a vacuum. And so it's the pressure, it's the environment that creates opportunities to make diamonds. And I would say that Dr. King was a diamond. I would also say that there's diamonds in this room. And so as the pressure builds and we move forward, I want you to look in yourself and be the change that you want to see. So thank you for coming out. We also have a gift for our speakers today, but in the interest of time, we're just going to ask them to hang back. I am between you and food, so I don't want to get in the way of that. Thank you truly for coming out. Your presence is valued. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
That concludes our event. You can meet us out for the reception right outside these doors.